All right, hi guys. So today I wanted to make a video about running Call of Cthulhu as a new keeper. I'm going to talk about a little bit about the rules, and then I'll talk about scenario design. And this is like my idea of how to design a Call of Cthulhu adventure or investigation. So first on the rules, I would say um, the rules are quite easy to pick up and play. We're talking about 7th edition Call of Cthulhu. Um, I don't think you need to modify the rules. You don't need to. I've seen people online say, oh, we just ignore parts of the rule book. I really don't think that's necessary. It's quite easy to run the game rules as written because that covers most of the ordinary investigation scenarios. And then, you as the keeper, if there's some sort of gray area or, um, something that legitimately is not in the rules that comes up, well, then adjudicate that, right? Like that's part of the role of a keeper or a GM in any RPG system. So I would say that, you don't really need to do much of that. And, yeah, you don't need to just excise large parts of the rule book. Um, and also, um, if you follow the rules as written, I think that in general gives a better experience because the rules place constraints on what the players can do, what you can do as a keeper, and I think that having those constraints is really important in the role playing in any role playing game to make it kind of um, a good experience for everyone. But I will say that another thing is my one of my players mentioned that he had tried other RPG systems and he was pretty glad that when we were doing Call of Cthulhu, um, we didn't have to keep flipping to the rule book. There were, of course, things that came up I had to reference, but it wasn't like every single encounter I had to check. Okay, what can be done, what can't be done. It was pretty simple. The combat and stuff like that is not like very mechanically kind of dense. Um, but yeah, so I think overall, uh, you don't need to ignore a lot of the rules or modify them in 7th edition. They work just fine as written, I think. Now, the next thing I want to talk about will probably be the main subject of this video is how to think about the investigation you're designing and what what you're actually doing, right? So when you design the scenario, you hear a lot. I see a lot of things online with Call of Cthulhu about people talking about, oh, the plot of the investigation, or this happens in this scene of the investigation. I don't think that's the right way to think about it. Although, I understand what people are getting at when they say that. I think as the keeper, what you should do is if you're coming up with your own scenario, start with the location that this is going to take place in, right? Like, okay, is it a city? Maybe it's even just one house, whatever the case may be. Think about the location and then populate that with the kind of most important NPCs that your players might encounter. They don't have to, but they might encounter them. So, for example, the game I ran, it was the city of Alexandretta in Syria during the French colonial mandate. So I had like the colonial governor, I had the police captain. Another character was like the sheikh of the mosque. I had the there was a Turkish spy that was there. Things like that. I think you get the idea. But having those NPCs in the location, then of course you want to have the inciting incident. Why is the investigation taking place? And the antagonist. Um, but what I think the way I'm approaching this, and what I think is effective about this, is you're not giving a prescribed list of objectives that the player characters have to do, and you're also making sure that the NPCs are also like kind of part of what unfolds. So the NPCs may have things that you come up with as the keeper, things that they're doing in the background. Maybe it's related to the main kind of mythos, conspiracy that's unfolding, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's something different, right? Like you could have uh, a scenario set in in 1920s in the U.S. somewhere where maybe there's some bootleggers that are involved, but not on the level of like the mythos, but they're kind of mixed up in it somehow, right? They're maybe opposed to the investigators for different reasons or something like that. That could create other complications. Um, but I guess the point is thinking about the location and the investigation as a place that will emerge through the gameplay, rather than, okay, they need to find this objective to advance to this next stage of the investigation, culminating in the confrontation with the antagonist. um, I don't think that's I think that's a little too linear, and is not that exciting. Or it can be, but it could be a little limiting to what the players want to do. That's kind of my issue with some of the published Cthulhu adventures. Although I've run them, I've talked about some on the channel that I like. So there's a happy medium with these things, I think. And when that leads me to my next point, which is clues themselves. What is the function of the clue in the investigation? And I think if you have too rigid or too prescribed a set of clues, that can kind of help things, that can kind of hinder things more than it helps, I should say. So the clues should be reflective of what the players are encountering as they investigate the location, and the clues should reflect what's emerging in the gameplay rather than having the gameplay reflect the clues that you've already come up with um, as the keeper. Because I think you could come up with the scenario of like, this is the incident, this is the antagonist. These are the things the antagonists are doing in the background. But the player is going to experience that differently, and they might see something in the investigation that you had no idea, and then you can respond to that, and then that's what makes the game interesting. So there's kind of a medium. I don't really have a firm answer for this, but having some clues is good. I think having handouts in Call of Cthulhu is nice, like physical handouts if you're playing in person. I think that does help build the immersion a lot. So that's definitely helpful. But making sure that the clues are not keeping the investigators on a kind of railroad, which will gets into my next idea, which is having making sure that the antagonists or these other NPCs are doing things in the background in response to the investigators. So an obvious example would be for like, the investigators are outsiders to a certain location. Maybe the cult, if the antagonists are cultists, the cultists are going to maybe start to observe them at the very least. Or, maybe they have to speed up doing their ritual faster, or, the obvious thing would be, oh, maybe they just try to kill the investigator characters, something like that. Um, but I think that's important, and that also prevents kind of railroading where the gameplay is also kind of emerges organically from the keeper side, um, where your NPCs also have to respond to what the players are doing, just like the players are responding to your NPCs. So I think if there's a main takeaway is to think less in terms of like a linear um, steps to resolve an investigation or a plot in some kind of like movie or book plot, and more of the players are in this location, they're in this situation. What would they do? What could they do? And that's where you populate things with the NPCs. So there's different people they could go to. There's different, sub locations, obviously. Um, and then have the investigation emerge out of that, the players interacting with this environment, this imagined environment, rather than a list of clues that lead up to a resolution. And I think I'll just quickly mention with the resolutions, I think Call of Cthulhu, you can have a big confrontation at the end. I mean, plenty of the mythos fiction has that, so it's not unusual. But I think also, maybe the investigators just have to leave. Like that can be a perfectly legitimate conclusion, I think. Or maybe there's kind of ambiguous resolution where maybe some of the cultists are defeated, but they're able to achieve the enemy, the antagonists are able to achieve something else, and that could lead maybe into a continued an ongoing kind of campaign or something. All right, so these are my thoughts on running Call of Cthulhu, and I hope you find them interesting at least. I hope they make sense, and I will talk to you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.